How's it going? Welcome back to Dylan Talks Tone, the podcast that discusses everything guitar tone from the pick to the speaker to the air in the room and everything in between. My name is Dylan McCurchie, and this is Dylan Talks Tone. So, a couple things. We're going to talk about some cool stuff tonight. First of all, we are going to talk about coil shapes. We're going to talk about why different pickups sound different. So that's going to be our main conversation tonight. But one thing I want to talk about from last week and the week before is, remember we talked about in one of our episodes recently about how our hands interface with the guitar and it changes the tone of the guitar because we grip the neck differently and we use our hands and fingers differently with different string weights, with different with different scale lengths and, the string tension. It makes us play the guitar differently. Therefore, it really does change our tone because we play the guitar differently. In that podcast, Mr. Open-minded to everything, me, said I would never play anything less than 10s because it's not possible for me to do so. One of our viewers called me out on that, and he said, I think you're full of crap, and I think that you could play with 7s if you really wanted to. So I think you should buy some 7s, and you should put them on a guitar that you're familiar with. And so I did. I ordered a set of those Reverend Willie G. Billy Gibbons strings. They're 7s to 38s. It's like 7, 9, 13, 20. I can't remember. The low is a 38. Anyway, 20, 30, 38, something like that. Anyway, so I'm just going to give you my feedback on that. Everybody's like, "Well, your tone's going to totally go away and it's going to sound like crap. You're not going to be able, you have to have a lot of string mass to have good tone." That is a bunch. I'm not going to say it's a bunch of crap, but here's what I'm going to say. I almost wanted to say that because here's what I'm going to tell you about thin strings. First of all, they're not as hard to play as you think with your left hand. But with your picking hand, okay, so for right-handed players, with your picking hand, that's where you really kill the tone because you end up pinching off notes. Like you almost like, when you do like a pinch harmonic, it like kills the tone because you're playing too hard. Honestly, it's once you lighten up, it almost sounds pretty much exactly like a regular guitar. It's more mid-rangey. The lower string mass definitely gives you more mid-range, and you can play with a lot lower action because the ellipsis of how much the string moves when you play it is actually less. I mean, there's just so much less mass there. It just doesn't move. And you have to play so delicately with it. So it completely changes how you play. And, everybody's going to argue with me until Kingdom Come that, I don't have any tone because I have 7s. But it's not that you don't have any. It does change it. I was not lacking for lows. I was not lacking for mids. I was certainly not lacking for highs. It was not deficient in any way. It was just so different that I had to completely change how I play the guitar. But it was an experiment worth doing. Now, I'm going to leave it on there and totally change to 7s. Probably not, because it's just so, I don't know. If you've been doing it for a long time or it's a need for you, I suppose you could do that. I had to change the truss rod a little bit, and I had to mess with the intonation a little bit because the tension is so much different. But overall, man, it really wasn't that big a deal. It was really pretty cool. It was an experiment worth the $6 to buy the set of strings. Let me just say that. And throw them on a familiar guitar and play it for a week. If nothing else, it's going to open your mind. I'm not going to say to new possibilities of string weights. You may never change your string weight as a practice. But to understand what it really, take the time and figure it out. Figure out why your tone's dead. Figure out why you're pinching notes. It makes you play more accurately. It changes how you think about how you pick with your right hand. So it's just an idea to do that because it if nothing else, it was almost like having a guitar lesson. It just changed everything, and it made me rethink how I play. Okay, so that's the one thing. So we're gonna talk about coil shapes today. The other thing, actually, before we get on to that, there's a couple of things that I wanted to talk to everybody about tonight. The way we're doing our podcasts, not everything is in the live one. So you all that are watching it on Facebook and Periscope right now, you're not seeing everything that there is to see. Because when we have, because we're going to have viewers call in, and we're going to have, or not viewers, but guests call in over the phone. We're going to have visual aid stuff that you're not going to see right here, because we're going to add them in later. And we're also going to show links to various things as this thing kind of flushes out. And so what I encourage you to do is go to DylanTalksTone.com. That is where this thing lives, okay? And there's going to be links to everything that we share. And when we have guests on, there's going to be stuff that we share there that you're just not going to be able to see here, because all you're seeing is the live recording as we record this thing. So please go to DylanTalksTone.com, check it out, hit the subscribe button, and it'll just open up some things that you're not able to have here. And as this thing grows, and as we start to get more and more people participating, because really you, the listener and the viewer of this thing, is what really drives it for me. So you come up with the questions, you come up with the content, and all I do is put the information together and share it with you. So since it's really all you, and we want to make this all about you, I want you to get the most out of it. So DylanTalksTone.com is where you're going to be able to do that. Now, the other thing that I want you to do, if you are interested, and I know not everybody wants to join another Facebook group. However, this is a little different, and I know some of you that are listening tonight are part of this group, and you know that it is different. Go to Guitar Tech. If you are not a part of my Facebook group, and those of you that are listening tonight and watching that already are, you know you are, okay? So those that are not, I'd like you to go to guitartechgroup.com. Guitartech, T-E-C-H, group.com. And I'd like you to throw your email address in there. And anyway, do that, and it will send you a link to our private Facebook group. This is not where you go to decide what color pickguard you want to put on your guitar. This is not where we post memes. This is not your normal Facebook group, okay? This is where we go when we have a real technical question. And in fact, if it is not a real technical question, I'm not saying I'm going to delete it, because we don't want to discourage conversation in there. But I want you to share your rigs. I want you to share videos of you playing in various situations. I want you to share what you do, okay? Your musicianship, what you play, and tell us as much as you can about yourself. And I guess your first post, I'd like you to introduce yourself, and I'd like you to tell us what your number one guitar, your number one amp, and what your number one pedal board looks like, just so we can all get to know each other, and what your favorite kind of music to play is. Because then, as you have questions, hey man, should I put such and such a pots, or should I do this or that? Ask any kind of technical question that we talk about here every week, but it gives us kind of a daily thing. And the cool part about it is that not only am I in there every day, but there are some industry professionals that you will run across on a daily basis as part of the conversation. This gives you access to some experts that not everybody has access to. So guitartechgroup.com. Go there and check that out. And if you would, and join us and be part of our community, because like I said, I'm all about making this podcast and everything that we do, our YouTube videos and everything, all completely about you and about what you need to make yourself sound better, because that's really what this is all about. So let's talk about our number one thing tonight, and that is coil shapes. Why does, for instance, and we'll just start with this because this is the easiest one, why does a P90, even though it's a single coil, sound different from a Strat single coil? Because they're both single coils, and you can wind, let's say, a bridge pickup to 8.2K, which is typically like what a P90, that's where we start ours. Why do they sound different, even though they're both big single coils? It really has to come down to the coil shape. Now, if you look at a Stratocaster, and we're going to use these two as an example. If you look at a Stratocaster, it is about 3/4 of an inch to not quite an inch tall, okay? I can't remember. I could give you the exact measurements. I have it over here, but I can't remember. So there, it's how tall a Strat coil is, right? Now you look at a P90 and it's actually quarter of an inch tall. Okay. The difference is the width of the coil. You could put almost exactly the same, more or less, amount of wire if you were to like weigh it on a Strat versus a P90. However, the shape of the coil is what makes all the difference, and here's why. If you go to Dylan Talks Tone YouTube channel and you look at episode 3, okay, that's Dylan Talks Tone, the playlist Dylan Talks Tone. Episode 3, it is how pickups work. And it talks about the fact that when you move the string over a magnetic field and a coil, that it's going to excite the electrons in the coil wire and create an AC voltage, okay? And inside that coil wire. And then from that coil wire, then that AC voltage moves, and then it becomes audio signal later on down the signal chain. All right? The interesting thing about that is that the shape of the magnetic field is what influences, and the shape of the coil, where those electrons are within that magnetic field, I should say, is what really influences how that pickup sounds. So if you take an electron and you place it very, very close to the magnetic poles, so let's say on a Strat pickup, you're an electron and you are very close to the middle of the pickup and you are right next to the magnets, and when the string vibrates, that is where the most motion is going to happen. And because of capacitive loss and because of the way the coil is wound, you are going to move at a different rate, more or less, kind of. There's a scientific way to explain this, but this is the easiest way. Less at the outside of the coil. The electrons at the outside of the coil are moving kind of more or less at a different rate than the ones at the inside because they're further away. The magnetic field is not as strong there. So, that being said, if you were to now change that shape to a P90, now we've got a very short coil. Most of the wire is farther away from the magnet. However, the magnet shape is also different because there's two big blocks of magnet on the bottom instead of little spindly ones in the middle. So now you have a completely different way of approaching the shape of the magnetic field, and you also have electrons that are a different distance from the magnetic field. They sit in a different place in the magnetic field, so the pickup sounds different. That's all it is. So, and that's really the thing. Even a Telecaster neck pickup and a Stratocaster neck pickup are different enough in coil dimension, even if you use the same magnets in the same pickup. So what I mean by that is you can take actually those pole magnets in a Telecaster pickup, and they would end up sticking out kind of funny, but you could actually use those in a Stratocaster pickup. So you could use exactly the same material in a Strat pickup and a Tele pickup, and they would still sound different because the coil dimension is different. Those electrons move at a different rate in different parts of the coil based on where it is within the magnetic field when the string moves. That's basically it. So even those would be different. Now, a Telecaster bridge pickup is a completely different thing. You may have seen, and you can go to Dylan Talks. You can go to Dylan Pickups Dylan Pickups YouTube channel, and you can look at the quick tips section there, and you can see in our latest quick tips we showed a difference between a bridge Telecaster pickup and a bridge Stratocaster pickup. This is because even though, let's say, that the weight of the coil, the number of coil windings, the magnets are exactly the same. Okay, let's say that they're exactly the same. They would still sound different, but this is for a different reason. This is because we're using this metal base plate on the bottom of a Telecaster pickup to change the dimensions and change the behavior of the magnetic field. That plate on the bottom is key to how a Telecaster sounds. Okay, much, much more than any other factor. Besides the position of that, so the position of that pickup, and this is just a little aside, but people are like, yeah, always, what makes a Telecaster, and blah blah blah, and the wood and all this and that, and that'll be for another story because I am going to talk about tone wood, just so you know, I am going to talk about it. But anyway, this is just a little aside. The reason a Telecaster sounds the way it sounds there's three main reasons. One is that plate that goes on the bottom of the pickup. Okay, that is the first stop. So that changes the way the magnetic field is shaped. That also means that it also changes the way the electrons move in the coil. Okay, when it is excited by the string movement. The next stop that I would say in its tone is the position of that coil, because the position of that pickup in relation to the bridge and its angle and everything, the way it's mounted in there. Now, I don't necessarily think that having it mounted in the big base plate versus a shorty base plate or whatever, that makes as much difference but it's really the position of it in relation to the actual saddles. Okay, and then the saddle type, the way the saddles are in a Telecaster, the relative position to the pickup, and also the style, because that's a huge thing. That's a huge thing for a Tele. As far as humbuckers go, that's a little more complicated, because when we start to talk about the difference between humbucker tones, and I'm just giving you basic variables here. Now, obviously, somebody's going to listen to this or see it on YouTube or whatever, and they're going to be like, there's a lot more to it than that. There is. And that's why we talk about this every week and not all in 1 week. So we'll get into more details on different things as you have questions, and I hope that you do, so that we can talk about them more specifically. So let's talk about humbuckers real quick. Humbuckers, the magnet shape is, again, completely different because you have actually two rows. You may have one magnet, but you have a north and a south set of pole pieces in the same pickup. You have two different coils in the same pickup. And so that magnetic field shape is very complicated because it changes polarity from one side to the other. And the coils actually, the direction of the current in them is different also, because it goes forwards through one and backwards through the other. So yeah, so that is a completely different thing, and we could get into a whole episode just on humbuckers and the reason they sound the way they do. And you think about like a Charlie Christian pickup, the reason that one's different, those are very, very, very low resistance, and they have a very large coil wire diameter as in comparison to any of the other pickups that we've discussed so far. And so the magnetic field is a thing in them, but mostly it has to do with the inductance / the capacitance of the wire that you use to build those pickups. So they are completely different. But magnetic field shape is a big, big thing. So here's some experiments, some fun things you can do. If you have a pair of humbuckers and a guitar that you don't mind messing with, you can actually change the pickups. You can do a couple of things. You can change the magnet strength. You can go from a Alnico 5 to an Alnico 2. Or take the cheap ceramic ones out of some cheap Asian pickups and put an Alnico 5 magnet in there. That'll change the magnetic field. It will change how it relates to the coil, because you've changed the size of the magnetic field, the overall size. You'll change the initial area, the initial point of the magnetic field, because the strength of that. You change everything with just a magnet. Another fun thing you can do is you can take a Stratocaster pickup and you can put a piece of tape across the bottom first so that you don't short out the magnets, because sometimes that'll happen if you have an older pickup. Put a piece of tape across the bottom and then just stick with the magnetic field. Just stick some razor blades to the bottom of a Stratocaster pickup. It'll sound more like a Tele, because what you've done is change that magnetic field shape just like a Tele bridge pickup. So just some fun things you can try. That's kind of that. My name is Dylan. This has been Dylan Talks Tone podcast. We are doing this thing live right now, and then we are going to share it on iTunes. We're going to share it all over the internet tomorrow, SoundCloud, a whole bunch of places. thank you very much for joining us. If you find this definitely valuable, please go to DylanTalksTone.com and just hit that button and become part of our community, because we just really want it to be about you and what you want to hear. Also, if you want to be part of our interactive community on a daily basis, feel free to go to guitartechgroup.com and join the group of people that really care about tone and not what color your pickguard is or the latest meme. Thanks a lot for joining us, and we will catch up with you next week. This is Dylan, and this has been Dylan Talks Tone.